Okay, I was thinking this morning that today it's 70 to 80% of women are filing for divorce. If they're college educated and make more money than the man, that number actually goes up to 90% of women filing for divorce. The women are the ones destroying families today. Now, the data shows they're not getting divorced from the man's infidelity or abuse. The data shows that she's divorcing him because she is not happy. She's not satisfied. And when I mention this data, the statistic to women, they immediately fire back, well, what was he doing that made her unsatisfied? So instantly pointing the blame on the man like it's his fault. Now, the flip side is, if a man is cheating, and by the way, more women cheat than men do, okay? More married women cheat than men do. And that's common sense because the availability is more readily accessible for women. And they're more discreet, they might not get caught as often, but they cheat more than men do. But when a man cheats, it's never, ever the woman's fault. It's always his fault. If you were to flip that around and ask, well, what was missing in the relationship? Why did he cheat? The woman absolutely comes unglued. So there's absolutely zero accountability for women today. They can get divorced because he was doing something wrong. She's perfectly within her rights to, you go girl, you be happy, don't settle. And if he cheats, she's perfectly justified in saying, well, he's got an issue, he's a sex addict, he's got problems. It has nothing to do with her. So we live in an environment today where women have zero accountability, zero responsibility. And this is why men are walking away. They have had enough of this nonsense. They're not choosing to get married. And that's why now, for the first time in history, over 50% of women over 30 years old, never been married, never have children, are going to die alone unless they get a dog or a cat to have some kind of companionship. This has never happened before in history. I was watching a podcast the other day, and there's this thing called the silent epidemic. And the bottom line is that there's 5% of the population that doesn't want children. They're perfectly content, living their life, married or unmarried, but they do not want children, 5%. That means 95% of people do want to have a family, children and family. However, now there's 30 to 40% of people are not having children. And they're not having children at an involuntary level, meaning they want to, but they can't. And the saying that the reason for that is people have been putting off, primarily women, have been putting off marriage and family, having babies later and later in their life. So the narrative goes something like this. When they're young, these young women are being taught, you don't need a man, make sure you get your education, get your career set, maybe travel. You take care of you first, you live your life. And then when you get older, then you can find a husband and then you can have children. Now generally this starts to happen in the late 20s, early 30s. The problem that these women are finding is that they are successful women. They have an income, they've got experience, and they've been taught and conditioned, don't settle. They have such high, unrealistic, not just high, these are unrealistic expectations of what they're looking for in a man. They want a six-figure man, 6 feet tall. They have all of these boxes that need to be checked, and these women are so delusional, they think, because they've been conditioned to believe, that they're quote-unquote a 10 out of 10. And we use the typical, 0 to 10 point scale in terms of looks, beauty, attractiveness. Now, the reality is only about 2% of America, the world, is really beautiful. I mean, 2%. Next time you're in an airport, any public setting, just mentally make a note. Are you beautiful or not? Beautiful or not? In your mind, yep, she's a 6, she's a 7, she's an 8, she's a 9, she's a 10. Whatever it is, you're going to find it's about 2% of the world is actually legitimately naturally beautiful. That means 98% are not quote unquote 8, 9s, or 10s. They're just not. That's not reality. But these women believe that they are 10s, and they're at best a 6. Maybe with makeup, dressed up, nice outfit, maybe they could get to a 7. But they're not. But they have this attitude like they're going to get these high value men that have this high income, good looking, 6 feet tall, yada, yada, yada. So when they get to be 30, they start looking in the dating pool and they realize that the high value men, they're already wifing up the really good, attractive, high value women. The 8, 9s, and 10s are snapped up because high value men, they have their choice of what they want. And they're going to take a young, beautiful, feminine, fertile female that hasn't been ran through, been on the cock carousel for years. They want a high value woman, and these high value men have the pick of the crop. They're going to take the pick of the litter. That's because they can. It's always been that way. So you get a woman now in her 30s, she's the career woman, she's the boss babe, she's lost her youth, she's lost her beauty, she's maybe lost some of her femininity because she's been conditioned and ran through in the corporate world. All of a sudden, her choices and options aren't what she thought they were going to be. So she's starting to get a little dejected. She can't believe this is the choice I've been. Really? I have to be with this guy to be the father of my children? I don't think so. So she continues to wait and wait and wait. And then all of a sudden, cycle after cycle after cycle, she's losing more and more of her eggs. The eggs become less fertile. And there's, medical evidence that shows the eggs become more sticky. And then you start having increased, chance of Down syndrome, birth defects as these geriatric pregnancies take on as women get older. Then you've got the in vitro fertilization, and that's why now we're having this pandemic, an epidemic, actually, of childless people. And these are women that want to have children, men and women that want to have children, but especially for the women, they cannot have children. It's physically incapable. They're incapable of having children. And they're devastated by this. We saw recently Jennifer Aniston came out talking about this. It became very real to her when her father died and she realized that she's not going to have children. She didn't freeze any eggs. The in vitro didn't work. She's done. Her DNA is done with her. Think about that. For 6,000 years of recorded history, someone in her ancestry have had children and perpetuated the DNA lineage down throughout time. Every one of us living today, for 6,000 years of recorded history, we can trace back our ancestry that we have had children to perpetuate our DNA. But now, for the first time in history, people are choosing not to have children, and now this epidemic of involuntary childlessness, 30 to 40%. This is a silent killer. It's leading to a ton of depression, increased use of head meds, these antidepressants and therapists, counseling, and it's just sad, and it need not be this way. This is what is going on in society, and it's absolutely tragic what's happening. And we have got right now a serious depopulation issue. So from a cultural standpoint, this is going to be devastating. But more importantly, at least in my opinion, is the devastating effect this is having on the individual person, especially the individual female. This is a direct result of feminism and conditioning and deluding these young women into believing a lie, an absolute lie. It's tragic. It needs to change, and hopefully people will wake up and start to smell the Pop-Tarts. So this is RJ Regan, RJ on the Move. Take care.